think that one of the hardest points in a practitioner's life is when the work starts to change. Maybe the modality that you've built your entire practice around no longer excites you. Perhaps the kind of clients you've been seeing no longer feel aligned or like a good fit. Or maybe your role is shifting entirely from being the one holding the answers to being the one that teaches others how to find the answers for themselves. I know that I know that transition very well because I lived it in 2019 when I retired from reading tarot professionally. For years, tarot was my craft, my service, my identity. I was the tarot reader. It's how my friends knew me. It's how my family knew me. It's how people would be like, "What do you do?" Well, I read tarot, and I'd been that for so long that I didn't know how to be anything else in a way. So by the time I retired, man, was I burnt out. Oh God, I was so badly burnt out. I had spent years working with bad clients, answering poor questions, holding sessions without strong enough boundaries, or with, for a lot of the time, not enough energetic capacity to be holding the sessions in the first place, doing too much, overgiving, charging too little, and never really pausing to process what was coming up in those sessions. That constant output with no real replenishment, well, that eventually caught up with me and it kicked me in the proverbial pants. Okay, not fun, right? I knew that I wanted to move into spiritual based education. I wanted to teach people how to work with these tools for themselves. So instead of me, being the one to, hand over the answer or, guide their every step in their process, I instead wanted to give the responsibility back to my clients. And doing that through education, through spiritual based education. This is what I knew I wanted to do. But that shift was way harder than I thought it was going to be because I'd identified so strongly with being a tarot reader. I felt completely unmoored when I stepped away from it. It was like chopping off a limb. In all honesty, I hadn't given myself the time or the space to process the years I'd spent doing that work. I just, leapt straight into trying this new thing, to try and build this new thing without really closing the chapter that I just finished. I was just, one cliff edge to the next cliff edge, let's go. And it took me a while to realize that the pivot needed patience, it needed time, it needed processing. And I had to let myself not be the old version of me anymore, and at the same time not rush into the next version of myself either. Okay, balance. That space between, that liminal space, was where I could unpack what I'd learned, process what I'd carried, and ask myself honestly, who am I now? Where am I going next? What's important to me now? Where are my values? Where are my priorities? And how can I do this in a way that feels congruent, that feels in alignment, that feels authentic to me and where I am right now? And that's one of the biggest lessons I can share with you when asking this question. Don't over identify with your modality or your craft. You are not just a tarot reader or a Reiki healer or a yoga teacher. You are a whole person with skills, perspectives, and gifts that, well, these can evolve over time if you tether your identity too tightly to a single role or a single modality. That moment that you need to shift, you risk feeling lost, or worse, staying in work that no longer feels alive to you, or serves you or your clients, just because you you can't see yourself outside of it. You can't see anything, past that. So what happens when you're facing this kind of transition? Well, at first, give yourself some permission to pause. Okay, let's start there. Give yourself permission to pause. You don't need to pivot overnight. Don't be like me and be like, let's go from this to this in one, 24-hour setting. If you've been doing this work for years, there will be experiences, insights, even unprocessed emotional residue that you're going to need to work through before, stepping into that next phase. Because also there's things that you can take with you that you've learned that you can go into that next stage better equipped, more refined. It isn't wasted time. This is integration, and integration is important. Stay focused on your why. Ask yourself, what drew me into this work in the first place? What parts of that are still true for me now? You're often the core values or the purpose, there's going to be consistency that's going to remain the same, even if the form or the modality or the practice changes. And lean into congruence. This isn't about aligning your work with who you are right now, not who you were. It's about aligning your work with who you are now, not who you were when you started. If the old role no longer matches you, it's not just okay to change. It's necessary if you want to keep your work honest and alive. Change. Okay, be congruent. And finally, remember that um, skills and wisdom, the skills and the wisdom that you've built, like that doesn't just disappear because you're transitioning and pivoting. It's just because you stopped doing one specific thing. My years as a tarot reader still shape how I teach, how I mentor, how I guide today. All of the 20 odd years worth of knowledge, I bring that into what I do now. They're part of the foundation. It's not something that I've erased. It's not something that's never existed. It's now integrated. So if your practice is evolving, trust that the shift is part of your growth. Let yourself release what no longer fits. Give yourself time to process and then build the next phase. In a way that honors who you are now. That's how your work and you, okay, you and your work. This is how you stay alive and relevant, and most importantly, how you stay sustainable.